Mr. Fernandez Guzman. Mr. Ferrer.
Here.
Ms. Gutierrez. Mr. Evia.
Here.
Mr. Holland. Mr. Malouf. Mr. Martinez.
Present.
Mr. Pago.
Here.
Mr. Sanabria.
Yes.
Ms. Solar McKinley.
Yes.
Mr. Wortman.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fano. Chair Lasarte.
Here. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Martinez. If you could lead us on the pledge. Madam Attorney, if we have the declaration of voting conflicts, if you could read that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, you should all have in your packet the potential voting conflicts report. If there are any conflicts of interest, would you please note them for the record at this time? None shown, Mr. Chair.
Great. Are there any citizens' comments, Mr. Director?
None received, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion for the minutes and approval for the
Second.
hearing? No objections. The item passes. Mr. Director, your report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, let me start with giving everyone a brief legislative update on the Senate budget passed a conforming bill, Senate Bill 1988. It still includes consolidating some of the functions of Tampa Hillsborough Orlando Expressway Authority Mid-Bay under Florida's Turnpike. It holds MDX harmless. Their focus is still on agencies that have existing lease purchase agreements. On this particular conforming bill, there is no companion on the House. The two transportation bills, 1866 on the Senate and 1399 on the House, the only language that is common to both bills that would affect MDX is there is a study being required of the Florida Department of Transportation and the Florida Transportation Commission to look at further efficiencies of using the department on behalf of expressway authorities to, design, construct, maintain facilities. So that's the only common language. The big issue that I wanted to mention is that the House and the budget for 12-13 is going to conference later this week. It's been stalled today, and that's what the paper says. But the important thing on that is in the House bill, the House sweeps $120 million from the State Transportation Trust Fund. 120. That would reduce the Department of Transportation's work program by as much as $200 million in the current year. Now, on the Senate side, the Senate actually sees a net increase of $130 million to the State Transportation Trust Fund because they redirect these fees that they collect from license plates and all this stuff that passed a couple of years ago. If you take that increase and you project it out 5 years, the Senate bill would add $2.8 billion in new projects over the 5-year work program. That's what's going to conference, and I will keep you updated. We're also monitoring some other bills, one on public-private partnerships, one on salaries. There's many bills that are going through. Today's the last day of committee meetings. If it doesn't get into a committee today, it doesn't have a companion, it probably will not see the light of day. So I will keep everyone abreast, and I've been working with the chair of the Intergovernmental Committee. If we need to call a conference call between now and March 9th, the end of the session, for any issues that affect MDX, we will do that. Project updates, 826, 874, or as we in transportation call it Section 2. I want to congratulate the district and the contractors for a job well done. If you've driven that project on the Palmetto as you're getting to Bird Road and 874, it is outstanding. As they've gotten all the maintenance of traffic out, it is flowing tremendously well. So thank you, Gus, and your team. On 874, the construction of the Killian Parkway, or the portion that's south of Kendall Drive that goes to the Turnpike, if you've driven in the intersection, the friction course is already on in the eastbound direction. The westbound friction course, which is the last layer of asphalt, will be installed this week. We'll be out of there. Maintenance of traffic is pretty much lifted. Mainline friction course will start later in the month, and it should be completed by the end of March, is what I'm told. The final completion date for the southern portion, or 87409, is April 18th, and we should be on time for that. The northern portion, which is 87404, Mr. Chair, already commenced construction, and it has a completion date of the summer of 2013. So by the summer of 2013, the entire 874 corridor will be completely widened. You're all aware of the major traffic shift that took place yesterday on the 836, 826 interchange. Again, I want to reiterate that it only affects westbound 836 traffic. If you want to go north or south in the Palmetto, you have to exit right after Red Road on the right-hand side, the exit that's to Milamdary. Once you're on that ramp, follow the signs, and you can get off on 72nd Avenue, or you can get off on the Palmetto north or south. There was a lot of confusion yesterday, but I think the signage out there is good, and the traffic actually was flowing very well. But I just wanted to...
Yeah. You're not kidding.
We'll see an increase in tolls for this day.
All right.
It's horrible.
One question I was asked yesterday was, if you get on at Milamdary Road, will you be precluded from going west on 836? And the answer is no. There is a ramp, there is a lane that takes you west on 836. So that's important. Update on the integrated back office. I met with the Turnpike, Tampa, and Orlando. We started mapping out the next steps in making the integrated back office a reality. The idea is to have a central clearinghouse for all transactions, whether they're SunPass or video, happening at one location with retail centers in the major urbanized areas. And those retail centers would allow walk-up customers to take care of their accounts, regardless if you're on a MDX highway or a Turnpike highway or you're on the I-95 Express. That's our goal, and I will continue to keep the board updated as we make progress. And you will hear progress at Team Florida as well. For those that, Mr. Wortman, at Team Florida, you'll hear updates on that as well. Some community initiatives on the week of February 6th, Mr. Chairman. MDX and the public school system, Miami-Dade Public Schools, launched the cooperative campaign to raise awareness of the dangers of distracted driving. The campaign includes asking students to develop public service announcements or posters on the topic. The 3 top PSAs and the 3 top posters will be chosen and receive a cash prize, $250, $150, and $100. It's on our website. Of those 3, there will be a grand prize for each, and each grand prize winner will get $2,500 for their school. And that PSA and that poster will be shown on WSVN, WSVN.com, and WLRN. So there's been a lot of motivated students developing posters and public service announcements. This last Friday, February 24th, MDX participated with Commissioner Diaz of District 12 to hand out 1,000 SunPass Minis at the Cash Plazas at 97th Avenue. It was part of the Commissioner's 14 days of neighborly love. It was very well received. Most people were surprised that we were giving them free. So, and then two last items, just for your calendars. Hold the date against May 17th is the 9th annual Small and Minority Business Enterprise Workshop. This year it'll be at the Miami Airport Convention Center, where the State of the Ports was. That's where we're going to hold it. Also, I did get a commitment from Port Director Johnson that he's going to be presenting. He and his staff will be coming to the board meeting April 24th to present their master plan. April 24th. He will be here at the board meeting to present the master plan along with his staff. And Dr. Poole from the Reasons Foundation will be available after the March 28th Chamber of Commerce luncheon that he's going to introduce the South Florida Mobility Study. He will be happy to come to any of the meetings after that to discuss with us the findings and any other opportunities in South Florida. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Go ahead, Mayor.
Just two questions. Is the Reason Foundation report available yet?
No, it isn't. I have a draft,
Yeah, well,
the last draft, which I've circulated,
that
but
draft is 6 months old.
yes, I don't have the latest one.
We don't have the
No.
latest.
He's going to release it that day,
That day, okay.
yes.
So I think, would you get copies for all of us?
I will do that.
And the second question, and I know that you're not privy to what the governor thinks, but and maybe nobody else is here either, but the Senate version and the House version of the transfer of the sweep is a major difference. So where exactly is the administration, the state administration on this? And don't look to Gus. I'm not going to ask Gus.
I don't know. From a transportation standpoint, anything that sweeps the Transportation Trust Fund is not good for us.
But that doesn't tell us where the governor is going to, so we don't, Fausto doesn't know yet where the governor's office is coming down on this.
Conference committee is scheduled to be this week, and we will hopefully see something come out of conference, and then we'll get indications from the administration which way they're going to go on the outcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Javier, the last time we were...
Let me ask you something. I'm sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
How do we communicate to our legislators our disappointment, for lack of a better word, in the sweeping of the transportation fund, and how important it is to communities, but not only to communities, in the job creation and the continuity right now in our economy? And how do we make that? Do we have to pass a resolution? Do we have to make a motion? Does Fausto know? Okay.
Every legislator, when we meet with them, the first thing we say is to keep the trust funds whole, that the trust fund is a trust fund intended for transportation. And what we try to tell them is the multiplier effect of sweeping. And it's not a matter of how big it is. Any kind of sweep has a multiplier effect. So it has a trickle down. And yes, it does affect every district. And the Secretary will attest that whatever the final number is divided amongst all the different districts, so there will be projects that get affected one way or the other. One thing that we do is that we ensure that the projects that we have in partnership with the district aren't affected, and they're not affected. With that said, it still affects transportation. They're all aware of it, Board Member Solar McKinley. The Senate is well aware of it, and they're actually trying to add money to the trust fund. The House is unfortunately having to sweep because they've got to balance, and that's the arguments that they make. But they're well aware of the impacts.
And can I ask Mayor Ferre, do you know where the governor stands on the sweeps?
Didn't you hear my question
No.
just a moment ago?
Well, no, I heard your question.
We don't.
But
You didn't understand the answer.
I didn't understand the answer.
We don't know.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Director, last, I think at the last meeting with, at the Operations Committee, I think the folks from FEC were there.
Yeah.
Have you met with them after the fact?
In fact, today, there was a meeting with Director Lou Regatos and General Counsel Leslie, where they came and presented a proposal. And it was the first meeting since that day, and I don't know the results because it happened right before this meeting. FEC, on the Oleander corridor. So is there any update that either of you are privy to give based on the meeting?
I think we came away that we've both got a couple of bits of homework, so we're...
But it is moving along.
We're moving along, and there's just some questions we need to get answered.
Yeah.
And our negotiations with the MAKE, how is that coming?
We got a revised version from the district yesterday, actually, yesterday afternoon, so we're going to go through it and provide him comments and hopefully bring it in for a landing.
Perfect. All right. Go ahead, Mayor.
With regards to the Oleander route, Are we going to look at a competitive route that includes the Palmetto Expressway?
Well, on the Palmetto Expressway, you can run buses.
We can what?
You can run buses on the Palmetto Expressway with configuring, you would have to reconfigure the lanes. Obviously, that is a competitive corridor
Well,
to
I
a
mean,
bus only.
But that's the question. Are we
Right.
going to be comparing apples to apples?
We're going to compare apples to apples, but what was asked of us to look at on the Oleander at the last MPO meeting, the Chairman Martinez of the MPO wants to take a look at introducing railroad, the DMUs back on that corridor.
With, to wake up all the neighbors in the morning, right?
He wants us to take a look at that again, and we're going to have to look at that within that corridor.
We?
As part of this analysis, he wants to reintroduce the rail, the DMU.
But this is something that he wants us to do?
The partnership between us and FEC in the study.
And the MPO.
And the MPO.
And the MP. So in other words, and who's going to pay for the study?
That's what the meeting today was about.
I see.
That's what the meeting today was about, and that's where I guess we've got to go next, to see how it's all paid.
Any other questions to the director? Hearing none, we'll move on to the general counsel's report. Pam?
Board members, we have two litigation matters that we have noticed for a shade meeting, and I apologize, but we're going to have to retire to the adjacent room. One matter that we need to discuss first is the Superior Landscaping litigation, which right now is set for trial mid-March, and then we also need to do some briefing with you on post-trial matters on the community asphalt case. So we will do the Superior Asphalt first. We have outside counsel Mitch Bernstein and Matthew Mandel here from the Weiss Serrata Helfman Law Firm, and so they will brief you on that. And then after that, we'll have Kirk DeLeon brief you on the community asphalt litigation.
Perfect. So we'll break, and then we'll we'll reconvene once we.
Yes, and we'll get through it as quickly as we possibly can.
Mr. Chairman, before
Go
we
ahead.
break, Pam, I'm sorry I didn't catch it in the minutes that we just approved on that portion dealing with the Sunshine. I think that was reported wrong. I wasn't asking for an update for MDX on how two members can meet. I mean, we know how to do that. What I was asking is that you discuss this with your counterparts at the Florida Transportation Commission and FDOT, who seem to have a problem with figuring out how to do it. So it wasn't for us. The way it's written in the minutes, it says it's as if I was asking you to do that for MDX.
Pam, could you make those changes?
Please.
And so you'd like the minutes changed to reflect that you're requesting that
My
I
request
contact...
was for you to help the FTC and the corresponding attorney at the FDOT, who seem to be struggling with the issue.
Okay. That was Mr. Conroy?
I don't know what his
Okay.
name is. He's-
I'll make that contact with the Transportation
No,
Commission.
but I mean, we need to correct the minutes.
Okay.
Correct the minutes.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep. So we're going to adjourn for a few minutes. I believe the general counsel's report is probably over. I would imagine that's over. We're going to go, the MPO representative report, the MPO representative is not here. We will have the treasurer's report. The first report from Mr. Sanabria as treasurer. Go ahead, sir.
Roll a drum. Okay, there's some good news. One, I'm not sitting next to Yvonne, so
I can't kick it.
I think it's I can go home without bruises on my left leg. Thank you, Yvonne. But now Louis will pick up. So
There you go. I was able.
the good news is that the net income is $1 million above the year-to-date forecast. Okay. However, I think we have some noise in the background there.
Guys, there you go.
You don't want to miss my report, Louis. I mean, never.
The highlight of
Please.
the afternoon,
Yeah.
of the evening. I'm sorry.
There you go. as I was saying, the good news is we have a net income of $1 million year to date. But there are some issues, and one of the issues is that the overall revenue at this time for this month is $355,000 below the year-to-date projections. And the forecast of it's also year-to-date is $870,000. So we have a year-to-date forecast of $74.7 million. The total toll and revenue fees month-to-date was $443,000 below forecast and $1,025,000 below year-to-date forecast. NDX, listen to this. NDX is approximately $11 million in outstanding receivables, and we're going to put a chart up. Do you have that chart? Okay. The first chart, you put it back on the first chart. Okay, here we go. The first chart is the normal transactions, the forecast, and the actual. So you'll see pretty much a flat line. They all converge. The next chart. Okay, this is the actual revenue. So here we have the forecast in the blue line. The collected, you will see the gap here. Here's where the gap is. Okay? Now it's converging a little closer, which is a good bit of news. But we do have some homework to do, and we're working on it. And in the next 30 days, we have a business plan. The executive director is conducting some meetings and some fine-tuning to try to get this thing up to a normal level. Right now, it's not an actual normal level for various reasons. So that's the story on that. The other things is that the reason that we have a net revenue is that there have been some things that are task-driven that have been held back until the second half of the year. So I commend the executive director. I commend Marie Schaefer for watching very, very closely what the budget looks like and being judicious enough that they're holding back on certain things until we balance out the uncollected revenue side. So those are the major points I want you to be aware of. NDX at this time is seeing some decline in revenues, due possibly because of the gas revenue, gas taxes, or the gas prices going up. I sent you a CBO report on it, and there's a direct correlation of gas prices going up and people not commuting as much. So we are in a bit of a crunch from a couple of sides and a couple angles. But I'll let Marie finish up on the rest and the agenda we have coming up. Marie?
Just to kind of close out on the Treasurer's report, on some of the positive news on this chart that we had shown, as you could, let me go back to that chart real quickly. From a transaction standpoint, the forecast in prior year are below the actual fiscal year 2012. And the reason I wanted to bring it back to that chart is that many people have come to the board and said that people are diverting off our system. We're experiencing diversion on side streets. That chart clearly shows that people are using our system. It's above our forecast, and it's above actually prior years as well. So I want to point that out. From the revenue standpoint, in the past we had shown the board a correlation between a transaction and actual revenue. That necessarily is not as a fair comparison in today's environment. In the past, when a car exited toll plaza gantry, we recognized revenue at that point in time. Under the new scenario of open road tolling of sending a customer a bill should they not have a SunPass, we wait until a bill is actually sent. We verify the transaction, we make sure we have a good quality transaction, and then we send a bill. So not necessarily in one particular month when a car goes through, the transaction's recognized, but the revenue may not be recognized in the same month. So there may be a little bit of a timing issue there. And I just wanted to bring that out because The way the forecast was built, that blue line there that is above the red line, which is our actual numbers, is very important. We originally, when we put together the forecast, had the intention of actually making sure that lane exit date and revenue and transactions tied up. We recognize now, lessons learned and what the industry is doing, we want to make sure that we go through the process of validating the transactions, a good image, we have a good address to send it to the customer. So there's a little bit of a lag there. As far,
If I may, this is working up until the first half of the year when we start doing some task authorizations the second part of the year. Hopefully we'll have this issue, a lot of these issues resolved. And that's the thing that we are prioritizing. So if you don't mind, Marie, let Javier speak on that for a minute.
No, when we develop our budget, and this is a testament to the entire board, and we're about to start budgeting again. We're very conservative in developing our budget. We take into account a lot of these issues and the fact that we were going to have a receivable on the books and that our business model changes. Like Marie and Treasurer Sanabria said, the fact that transactions are tracking above our forecast and above prior year is a very good sign for our system. The challenge that we have going forward is bridging the gap from the time that the transaction occurs at the lane to the time we get the revenue in the bank. And I think that's the business plan that Mr. Sanabria is talking about. That's what we're working with Director Andriuk and Ms. Schaefer on making sure that we bridge that and we get our revenue closer on the video account portion of it, which is the accounts receivable piece. On the budget itself, Marie, we're very conservative when we do our budget, and if you look at the different classifications, we're tracking below what we budgeted, and we usually end up the year plus or minus 3%, usually on the minus side, where we leave money on the table. We're very conservative on that. We've purposely left some tasks to the second half of the year to see what was going on.
correct,
this year.
on the expense side.
On the expense side.
The only other issue that I wanted to point out in the Treasurer's report is the interest expense. The interest expense for year-to-date line item is pretty much to what we expected the budget to be. There's a little bit of a savings, about $241,000. For our new board members, we have about $240 million of debt that's on the books, that's variable portion. So what we're starting to see on our month-to-month interest cost is that there's a spread on our swap to what we pay. So we're monitoring that very closely because that obviously can drive up our interest cost and eat into the savings that you see here today. To Mr. Sanabria, we put together a budget and finance, hopefully in early March. One of the items we want to talk about is refunding opportunities, and I've spoken to Treasurer about that. But the interest expense is something we really need to watch very carefully because it really could eat through the savings very quickly. So if anybody has any questions.
So that concludes the first Treasurer's report, and just saying that we gotta watch what we do and see if we can fine-tune and fix a few things that are outstanding so we can bring in those uncollected revenues much faster than we are at this time. Mr. Warman?
Yeah. On page 2 of the report, near the bottom, public communications, I saw that, it says production, mass mailing, printing. This month it was 2.5 times what the average projected is. But on the year-to-date, it's way under that. Is that because the mass mailings and things go out at certain times, but we average this over the course of a year, or how does that work?
I'll let Cindy address it, but I believe it's task authorization driven. She's got certain events that occur at certain point in time. It's not necessarily a smooth 1/12. So the savings that you see, she may end up using it towards the end of the year.
Yeah. And this past month when it went over, okay, like 2.5 times the average, she's using that up because, like you said, task-driven, exactly. Okay, that was my question.
Board Member Wortman, did you need any more clarification on that? That was
no.
Okay.
Thanks. Any questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have a. What do we have? Do we have significant amounts of outstanding receivables in tickets or violations? They make a part of that.
Well, we have in point in time, in the slide that we had shown earlier about the revenue that is recognized and what is collected. We do have receivables. I reported back to the board back in January. It was roughly $10 million. It's still roughly $10 million.
Mr. Director, are we referring that stuff to the clerk's office for collection immediately? I mean, they have like the highest collection rate in the state.
We have
Parking, red light running, violations.
We have referred many of those transactions to our collections agency. Yes, we have.
Well, to the collection agency here.
To the collection agency that's on the contract that we have.
So
for our
you're
toll
not using the
operations.
clerk's office that's collecting for every city and other agency in the county?
No.
At all? You're not using them at all?
Not at this point, no.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Sanabria, they're a very nice format. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Committee reports are part of the record. We'll go into the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move it.
I may go on that Team Florida trip. I want to amend that part of the
Okay.
consent agenda. Thank you.
It'll be amended.
I think it's on there.
It's on?
It's on there already.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Florida.
Got it. All
To
right.
Tallahassee, correct?
Right. No,
Oh,
the
that's in
Tampa.
Tampa.
The April
On the 4th?
4th, yeah.
There's a motion, there's a second. Hearing no objections, that item passes. Going into the regular agenda, item A.
Mr. Chair, item 9A is MDX procurement contract 1205. This is for contamination assessment and remediation services. This is a PBAC contract that was endorsed by the Operations Committee on February 14th.
Move it.
Motion is second. Is there any comments on the item? Questions? Hearing none. Are there any objections to this? Hearing none. Item passes. Item B.
Item 9B is approval of Resolution 1201 regarding distracted driving. The resolution is in your packet, and that was endorsed by both the Policy and Planning and the Intergovernmental and Public Communication Committees on February 22nd, and it is a slight modification from what was brought before this board last month.
Move it.
Motion to the second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Any objections? Hearing none. Item passes. Item C.
Item C is approval of an amendment to the MDX bylaws. Again, this is in your packet. This is an issue that was discussed during our normal process back in the fall, and through some kind of misunderstanding, I think probably more on my part, we did not get this into the proposed bylaws changes that you all considered in December. So this came back to the Policy and Planning Committee on February 22nd. This was Mayor Ferre's recommendation, and it was approved by the Policy and Planning Committee on February 22nd.
Is there a motion?
Can I have a little bit of clarification? What was it was the missing of board meetings or committee meetings or?
Committees.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
Mayor.
just, it's committee meetings. Yvonne, the intent is not to be punitive, but to try to encourage participation by all members to go to committee meetings. Basically, what it says is that if you miss 3 meetings in a row, or if you miss half of the meetings during the calendar year, you're automatically not on that committee.
Okay.
Now, the chairman can reappoint you if he wants, or she wants.
My question is, and I'll put my example. Right now, I'm chairing operations, and it takes up a lot of time, my personal time, and of course, you know that I have another world. So I'm on other committees, but I don't attend those other committee meetings, and that's where
If you don't attend 3 in a row,
they can take me off the committee.
No, you're automatically off. Or if you miss more than half during the calendar year, you're
Will take
automatically
me off of all the other committees, so that I don't have to go through that process, because I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I mean,
One, through the chair.
ahead.
Okay, sorry. I struggled with this resolution quite a bit, especially because, one, it's a volunteer board, and because everybody here, they serve for free, and they have, I believe everybody here is gainfully employed in some form or fashion somewhere, and it requires a lot of time. So we added a dial-in capability, so you could have your office call in, and you can just listen to the committee, and so electronically, anywhere you're at. And we thought that might serve as some sort of facilitation, if you will, for those that are challenged.
But I think when we discussed this last time, I thought the dial-in did not count.
It was for the board meeting.
Those are-
Oh, okay.
These are committee
So
meetings.
it's now, right,
Now we can dial in.
my issue for that, just so, Mr. Ferre, just so you know, the issue that I had was, wait a minute, you can dial in for committees, but you can't dial in for the board. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it would make a motion that if you, for whatever reason, you're in the hospital, or you're at the city, or you're at the college, or you have some sort of important meeting or that you can't miss, or you're have an emergency, that you be able to call in and be counted as attending the board meeting if you participate via telephone. I believe we should be able to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
agree.
Go ahead, Mr.
I think the difference, Mr. Maloof, I think the difference is that a board meeting is a final. In other words, this is the board, and there's no going back. And a committee meeting, the vote of a committee meeting has to come to the board, and there's a difference. I really think that, in the first place, it doesn't matter how many meetings you miss. You cannot be suspended, because the governor appoints some of us, and the Board of County Commissioners appoint others, and we can't be suspended. So it's not a question of being suspended. There is no suspension. The issue is whether we want people to vote by phone. I don't mind people hearing all the conversation and all the discussion. My concern is to have someone vote, because and I know, we all know, that most of us, when we do this thing, we put the mute button on and we're doing 10 other things at the same time. And I'm just reluctant that in important business that we have, that we should be voting by phone.
I think Mr.
That's a good
Maloof
point,
and
Mr.
then- and Ms.
Frey.
Maloof.
I mean, that's a great point. But the fact of the matter is, these are official committees of this board, and the votes count.
But they're not final.
So they're not final. So
It comes to the board.
But the intent, you mentioned, you had, I heard someone mention that you didn't want it to be punitive.
Yeah,
Well, it's pretty punitive to be removed from a committee.
I don't think so. I think the chairman can report.
It's either you have it one way or the other. I mean, I support being able to attend a meeting by phone if, there's extenuating circumstances. But now, one second. Now, if there's a limit, if you want to place a limit on it, and someone's abusing the process or not showing up, then I could see where.
But Pam,
right.
hold on for a second, guys, because
Because to me,
I
the
think,
commute is half hour to get here and half hour to go back. So I lose an hour,
You can do it by phone.
yeah, but
and I can, plus the time. So,
Pam, right now, there isn't a prohibition where you could attend the board meeting by phone. You could do that. The only prohibition comes in, I believe, it was regarding a travel issue.
That's
But
correct.
But it's linked. It's linked, meaning if you do this, then that. You
What do you
understand?
mean? Like, what do you mean? If you attend the board meetings, then
by
you're able-
phone, then you can't travel. You travel on your own dime. You can't go to Team Florida.
That
You
actually
can't
has
go
been in
to
our
Ivy-
travel policy for some
Right.
time, but it was recently put
Yeah,
into the
that's
bylaws.
what was created. And so, I mean, I feel sorry for some of the board members that have jobs that, may occasionally need to call in. Now, if you call in, if you want to say, if you do it consecutively for a period of time, then you can only do it so many times, something like that, Mr. Mayor. Like you can only do it 3 times, consecutively. No. This is different. It's the reverse. It is if you don't show up 3 times, you're off. But now there's
For the board, you can finish and I'll respond.
Mr. Martinez, there is a prohibition, according to my understanding, from calling in and attending board meetings by phone, and still being entitled to travel to official meetings.
That is also incorrect.
It is?
The way, if I'm correct, Ms. Leslie, clarify it. You have to miss 3 meetings, or you have to be on phone for 3 meetings, which means basically a quarter of your meetings, you are not appearing here.
You're misunderstanding me, Mr. Martinez.
But it's not automatic. And you can vote from phone as many times as you'd like.
Yeah, my
Is that
understanding.
my understanding of what the rule is?
No, that's not true.
The issue here is this, look, Al, first of all, right now we're just dealing with a committee. Right now we're just dealing with the committees. If
Right.
you want to amend the rule for the board, right, which is the one of the travel and you can attend by phone, which we visited that maybe about 2 meetings ago.
Right.
Yes. Okay? If you want to do that, then, as a board member, you could bring an item at your committee, right? And you could put together something that you feel, and we could vote, you could vote it, we could look at it, we could discuss it. But right now, we're dealing with just the committee regulations, which is you could attend the committee by, that basically you could attend by phone. If you miss the committee, then you're off the board.
Right. In other words, if you want to serve on a committee, you got to show up. I get that, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it, but
So if you're okay with it.
I'm okay with this.
I think there's a motion from the vice chair.
Second.
There's a second. Is there any other comments or questions? If there are no other objections to this item passes. The informational items are part of this package. I'm going to waive my comments, and I told you, Mr. Fernandez Guzman, that I would get you out of here at 6. It's now 6. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Okay.
En el trabajo.